Welcome to Dr. Jester Rants, and I'm gonna rant about this. From Algeminer, okay, you got it, you got what I'm not trying to say here. Imam of Mecca's Grand Mosque hints at the normalization with Israel in Friday's sermon. That's very, very good news. Well, hopefully it is true, but it's, even if it's not, it's still kind of a tiny little beacon of hope, because as you all know, in this region, they are a bit, quite anti-Semitic, and I'm definitely underselling it on how anti-Semitic they are, and how much they hate Israel on this. But if this turns out to be true, or at least in this case, at least just a message on a sermon, it's still better than nothing. But if it really happens, holy crap, that's amazing. Trump would have achieved some sort of peace that hasn't been possible for, well, since the creation of Israel, and hopefully decreased a tiny little bit of the anti-Semitism that is displayed in the Middle East, but better than nothing. Let's get back to the news. The Imam of Mecca's Grand Mosque appeared to hint at a normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia in a sermon delivered on Friday, following the Israeli accord with the United Arab Emirates last month. Speculation has been rampant on whether Saudi Arabia would follow suit. The New Arab, a London-based, Qatari-funded private media outlet. I don't know if it could be called private if it's Qatari-funded by the Qatari government. Unless it's a company funded from Qatar. Okay, I digress. Reported over the weekend that Abdul Rahman al-Sudais used his sermon to emphasize tolerance and cooperation between Muslims and non-Muslims. In particular, he cited instances in which the Islamic prophet Muhammad had friendly relations with Jews. The prophet had mortgaged his shield to a Jew when he died. He had shared harvest from the land of the Jews of Kaiba. He said the excellence he showed to his Jewish neighbor led to the latter to Islam. Muhammad al-sagheer, an Egyptian Islamic scholar, strongly condemned al-sudais' sermon, saying he is paving the way for normalization and treason from the holy Meccan pulpit. Some other users on social media also reacted angrily to the sermon, saying that it would lead to further normalization between Israel and Muslim countries, like I said. And we could see here, at the end of those the last two paragraphs of the news, we can actually see how much they still hate Israel and how much they hate Jews. You even could get a guy from Egypt who actually has peace with Israel after 1979. And that's more or less the time in which the Palestinians, or if you like to call them that, decided to finally decide, oh, fuck that, I'm not going to join Egypt, Jordan, or Lebanon. I'm gonna be an independent state. That's what they said. They finally decided not to join any other country in the region because apparently none of them wanted the Palestinians anymore, especially after the Black September in Jordan. But that's not the story for another time, for another video. But this is definitely very good news, and especially because, especially because of what you just saw here, what I just read. And just to give a bit more context, for instance, even in Egypt, some of the Muslims in there, especially sometimes in the army itself, they claim that Pigeons, dolphins, sharks are all Jewish spies or Israeli spies, and some of them want a few years ago, I think nearly a decade ago, more or less, Egypt had a small little amount of attack by sharks. It was kind of more of an uptick than the usual thing. And that affected the tourism a little bit, and they blamed Israel for it, claiming that the sharks were actual Israeli-controlled drones and things like that. Palestinians or Gazans sometimes like to claim that pigeons all have some sort of camera or things like that used to spy for Israel. That's the kind of stuff you are dealing with here in the Middle East. And it's quite interesting too, because it just shows how much of an anti-Semitic belief they have. It's the Quran is one of the biggest anti-Semitic textbooks in the world. But then again, you also have the communist propaganda, the Elders of Zion, and you still have one of the best-selling books in the Middle East, nonetheless. The Mein Kampf, My Struggle, from Hitler. That's how much they hate Jews and Israel. And another point to make clear is that they expelled almost every single Jew out of the Middle East. In fact, they confiscated most or all their property, including their bank accounts, and expelled them, made them stateless. And the only place they had to go was Israel. That's why sometimes you see pictures of people, pictures of black and white pictures of people walking around in the desert, and those are mostly pictures of that exodus from the Jews leaving the Islamic countries. Israel then repatriated all of those Jews in Israel, giving them homes and even money. That's what the Muslims could have done in the Middle East in regard to the Palestinians, but they didn't. They prefer to use them as shields or as weapons. Well, like the control left likes to use the Latinos, blacks, and other minorities as shields for their criticism. That's pretty much what they do. Anyway, I think that I have given plenty context on this news, so thank you for watching. See you on my next video. Good night.